economist Lumkile Monde is with us. Lumkile, good afternoon to you and welcome. I want to start, if we can, with Cyril Ramaphosa's New Year's message, in which he says today that the year 2018 saw South Africa on a new growth path. Is he exaggerating, or is that new growth path actually started to pay any sort of dividend?
Thank you, Jeremy, for having me. The new growth path is yet to show the path. Remember, after two consecutive quarters of negative growth in 2018, in the third quarter, we suddenly had a huge jump, taking us away from recession. So this is really an early phase of economic development. So I wouldn't really be as positive as the president. However, the president is now preparing for the elections in May, so he needs all messaging that can put himself and the ANC in a far better position. But South Africa is in a deep economic crisis, last seen around 1985, 1986, following the Rubicon speech, as well as the outflow of capital due to the trade moratorium that South Africa had declared during that period.
Now, factor into that 10 years of the Jacob Zuma presidency. If you talk about the crisis that we are experiencing at the moment, is this simply an abject failure of policy, or are there a lot of exogenous factors attached to this which have simply been beyond our control? For instance, the oil price.
Jeremy, I just want to remind our viewers this afternoon that in 2008, during the economic and financial crisis, South Africa was in a very strong position financially. Remember, the Treasury team led by Lesetja Kganyago then had run a surplus in our budget. Therefore, government had a very strong balance sheet to invest on infrastructure, particularly around energy, roads, as well as water infrastructure. And there was so much leakage. I think that opportunity for us to invest on that infrastructure, which underpins the growth path that the president talks to, is weak. So therefore, we've wasted so much money through corruption, through poor mismanagement, as we've seen in the Auditor General's report, and really poor leadership under President Zuma. So with the weakness in infrastructure across all areas, from water infrastructure, energy infrastructure, as well as the very weak balance sheet of South African households, we are in a very, very tough position. So, Jeremy, the external factors cannot be accounted for our crisis. This is a human-made by the ANC leadership under President Zuma, as well as those that were following instruction, whether it's Nomvula Mokonyane, who was pushing for the former Minister of Finance, Mr. Pravin Gordhan, to go, and when the rand collapses, she could pick it up, and many other misfortunes under the Zuma presidency.
Now, as far as the leakages go that you refer to, Lumkile, we've had in the last quarter of this year this job summit, we have the investment summit, we have this big $100 billion investment drive. Has enough momentum been created then in that respect to arrest this very dismal tide that you refer to?
No, not at all, Jeremy. But remember, what drives economic development, Jeremy, is infrastructure investment. We are currently at 55% debt to GDP. Yes, there's space for us. We can stretch the bit. However, in a policy environment that we are in, remember that we have now a bill which came out in December when everyone was on holiday around the amendment of Section 25 of our Constitution. We still have got uncertainty as to the position of the central bank. Remember that the economic freedom fighters have put in a members' bill around the restructuring of the bank. Thirdly, Jeremy, we've got an election coming in May, and there's a whole anxiety that society is gripped in given the growing racial tensions in South Africa and the lack of leadership to try and reinforce unity among South Africans into a common vision spelled out in the National Development Plan, and really South Africans working together. That requires leadership, and it's all talk that we saw in both the Investment Forum as well as the Job Summit. More has to be done, and that is policy. That's what is like South Africa. We need a policy that can give us an undertaking that there won't be any change. But more importantly, we need leadership that can drive that unity that is so required, that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. And together we must address the challenges that we find ourselves economically, whilst redistributing for the underprivileged and the poor. That remains marginalized 24 years into our democracy.
A huge road to hoe. Lumkile Monde, thank you very much for joining us as we look ahead to the economic year in 2019.